In a bizarre request, Jamie Spears is asking that his daughter Britney Spears continue to pay for his legal fees after the termination of their conservatorship. Recent court documents reveal that Jamie requested money from Britney's estate that would go towards his legal team for ongoing duties that are required for wrapping up the conservatorship. It has been just over a month since Britney's 13-year-long conservatorship ended, and now her father just wants a little bit more money. In the court documents, Jamie goes on to request prompt payment on account of Jamie's attorney's fees is necessary to ensure the conservatorship can be wound up quickly and efficiently to allow Brittney to take control of her life as she and Jamie desire. The fiduciary obligations Jamie owes did not end with his suspension or with the order terminating the conservatorship. The petition continued, adding payment of Jamie's attorney's fees from the estate is required regardless of the unsupported ad hominem vitriol launched at him. However, Brittney's lawyer Matthew Rosengart is firing back at this request and publicly called Mr. Spears shameful. He goes on to say in a statement to People magazine, Mr. Spears reaped many millions of dollars from Brittney as a conservator while paying his lawyers millions more, all from Brittney's work and hard-earned money. The conservatorship has been terminated and Mr. Spears was suspended ignominiously. Under the circumstances, his petition is not only legally meritless, it is an abomination. Brittney poignantly testified about the pain her father caused her, and this only adds to it. This is not what a father who loves his daughter does. Now, on top of this, the New York Times also recently exposed Jamie Spears for taking a $40,000 loan from Brittney's then business manager, TriStar Sports and Entertainment. According to the Times, he also received $6 million from Brittney's estate, and TriStar benefited from the conservatorship as well, to the tune of untold millions. Here's where things get really strange though. The report from the New York Times also alleged that Brittney's estate paid for a security company that specifically surveilled members of the Free Britney movement that were going after Jamie and TriStar's owner Luke Taylor, which means that unbeknownst to Brittney, she was paying to silence the people that were trying to help her. Plus, tens of thousands of dollars meant for Brittney's charitable foundation somehow ended up going to a Christian counseling group that Lou Taylor just happens to be associated with. So just really a lot of shady stuff going on here, and thank goodness Brittney has Matthew Rosengart to battle this out in court. TriStar had also been receiving a percentage of Brittney's earnings from when she was still performing, so for many years their cut was extremely high. However, when she stopped, they decided to rework the contract so that they would get a minimum of $500,000. And despite heavy criticism of this being an awful deal, I read that Jamie actually approved of this. Typically when an artist signs with an agent, the agent gets paid when they find the artist's work. The agency isn't supposed to just be charging you for the great honor of being on their roster. So for them to come at Brittney with this minimum guarantee is insane. Jamie's lawyer Alex Weingarten also said that all expenses were made with the approval of the court or by Brittney's court-appointed lawyer, adding that Jamie has nothing to hide and therefore will not hide anything. Well, he should at least hide the fact that he is so obviously after her money and nothing else.
Now that Britney Spears is trying to get her father Jamie off of her conservatorship, lawyers are looking more into things that Jamie did in his past, and they've uncovered that Jamie was stealing millions from Britney over the years. New documents have exposed that Jamie Spears allegedly took millions of dollars from his daughter Britney during the course of the conservatorship. Apparently this was in the form of unwarranted commissions from Britney's estate. This is all coming out now that Britney is asking the courts for the immediate removal of her father as her conservator. Then after this, she wants to end the conservatorship completely. In the wake of all the drama surrounding the conservatorship and the abuse of power on the part of her father, Jamie revealed that he was stepping down as Britney's financial conservator, although he said he won't be doing this immediately and we don't really have a timeline as of now. The next hearing relating to Jamie's role as conservator is on September 29th, where a judge is making a ruling on his fate in charge. Jamie has been in charge of Britney's estate, finances, and much of her personal life since a court-ordered conservatorship was established in 2008. And even though Jamie is now saying he intends to step down as financial conservator, Britney's lawyers Matthew Rosengart said this move by Jamie might just be to cover his tracks and quote avoid accountability and justice for what he's done to Britney. Apparently a clause of Jamie's termination as conservator will be to give him blanket immunity from whatever misuse they find, but Rosengart does not want to abide by that. Then Rosengart described just some of the mismanagement and theft that they have discovered. He said, quote, although our investigation is ongoing and further investigation is warranted, Mr. Spears' mismanagement of Mrs. Spears' estate is evident and ongoing. He took unwarranted commissions from his daughter's work, totaling millions of dollars. He takes a salary larger than his daughter's. He even alleged that Jamie paid himself for a quote unused office space as a way to get more money from Britney's estate. These allegations come after Britney and her team exposed that Jamie had been paying himself $16,000 a month since since 2009 through Britney's estate. The most recent statement that Britney's lawyers have made on this matter is that, quote, Ms. Spears will seek appointment of a temporary short-term conservator to replace Mr. Spears until the conservatorship is completely and inevitably terminated this fall. In the meantime, if Mr. Spears will not resign now, Ms. Spears requests that at the September 29th hearing, the court suspend Mr. Spears immediately and formally appoint his temporary successor. So thankfully progress is being made and the truth is finally coming to light after all these years. And I just hope that we see justice being served, and that her father gets sued or even potentially jail time depending on what they discover.
According to several reports that we are now seeing, the FBI is launching a probe into Britney Spears' father. He's apparently under investigation right now for setting up illegal surveillance, which included recording private conversations in her own bedroom. According to a report from Deadline, Jamie Spears is apparently now under investigation over claims that he had secretly recorded private conversations in Britney's bedroom that included talks with her lawyers, among many other things. Jamie allegedly hired a security firm to come in and monitor all of her communications. Britney's lawyer Matthew Rosengart called this an illegal act and stated that California is a two-party consent state when it comes to being recorded. Rosengart wrote in a new filing submitted to Los Angeles Superior Court, "While they are not evidence, the allegations warrant serious investigation." He then went on to say that the deeply disturbing allegations will result in Jamie having to defend his own interest and not his daughter's. The filing by Rosengart then says, "Regardless of the outcome of the allegations, what cannot be genuinely disputed is how deeply upsetting they are to Ms. Spears, and if nothing else, they magnify the need to suspend Mr. Spears immediately." However, he did clarify that this suspension he's talking about will not impede the ultimate goal of terminating his control in this conservatorship altogether. The only thing that Jamie is going to lose is something that he should never have even had in the first place, and it will stop his ability to continually harm his own daughter. This allegation that he has secretly recorded her conversations is crossing unfathomable lines which warrant a serious investigation. Anyone who is part of a conversation in California must consent to being recorded when there is a reasonable expectation of privacy. Like, I don't know, just being in your own bedroom. You would immediately expect that your conversations would remain private. What Jamie has also repeatedly done is try to confuse the issues at hand to seek further delays in his control over Britney. If the allegations are proven to be true though after this investigation, his abilities to continuously drag this case out longer would just be rejected altogether. For example, when he agreed to step down from his role and have someone else transition into being her conservator, Jamie tried to seek $2 million for this to happen, which is not how the agreement works at all. You were found out to be taking advantage of this conservatorship, and so that's why there were petitions and calls for you to step down. It doesn't happen after another unwarranted massive payout goes through. On top of that, he continued to argue that Britney needs to be in this conservatorship, which most likely isn't going to happen. The latest filing from Rosengart comes 48 hours before a big hearing for Britney. There are also reports saying that the FBI will be handling this investigation, but no spokesperson for them has commented on the case to confirm as to whether or not this is true. In the closing section of this recent filing, Rosengart writes, "Ms. Spears submits respectfully that her father's efforts to confuse the issues and seek further delay must be rejected. They are in fact a subterfuge designed to avoid the stigma of being suspended and its consequences, including the likelihood of disgorgement and rejection of outstanding of legal fees, sustained objections to the pending accounting, the transfer of files, and other remedies. In short, we respectfully submit that based upon fundamental legal principles, including what is indisputably in the conservatives' best interest, the path forward is clear. Mr. Spears' latest efforts at delay must be rejected. He must be suspended on September 29th, followed by the prompt termination of the conservatorship." Britney Spears' lawyer Matthew Rosengart is now claiming that her father Jamie wanted a $2 million payout in exchange for his removal from the conservatorship. Thankfully, Britney's lawyer is done seeing her have her finances drained, and now he's firing back. Jamie Spears is now doing everything he can to get more money out of his daughter before finally departing from his control over her life. Rosengart has now filed a supplemental petition to have Jamie immediately removed, but said that he tried to barter his exit by asking for $2 million in payments. Not that long ago, Jamie announced in a court filing that he intended on preparing for an orderly transition for a new conservator, thus stepping down from his highly publicized role as co-conservator. In response to this new payout request, Matthew Rosengart filed a statement with the Los Angeles Superior Court and said, "Regardless of the past, Mr. Spears and his counsel are now on notice. The status quo is no longer tolerable, and Britney Spears will not be extorted." In addition to that, he took more shots at Jamie and said, "Mr. Spears' blatant attempt to barter suspension and removal in exchange for approximately $2 million in payments, on top of the millions already reaped from Ms. Spears' estate by Mr. Spears and his associates, is a non-starter." He then goes on to say that the only honorable, decent, and humane course of action would be for Mr. Spears to resign now and provide all the necessary information to evaluate his accounting, and if matters cannot be resolved consensually, to try to defend his accounting as well. Despite being under direct pressure from his superstar daughter as well as the public at large, Jamie's notice of beginning the transition process was filed with resentment. With the next hearing being held on September 29th, Jamie Spears Spears knows that this transition process is going to take months to complete, which means he still has some control over his daughter's life in that time, and this is where things get a little bit sketchy. Now that being said, Rosengart put into the recent court filings that, contrary to the powers that Mr. Spears and his counsel seek to arrogate unto themselves, they do not get to choose the time and place of Mr. Spears' departure. Those issues are governed by law, the best interest of Ms. Spears, and by this court. Rosengart even compared this to a hostage situation, saying that this is not about him, it is about the best interest of his daughter, which as a matter of law mandates his removal. Putting aside the legal issues that require his immediate removal, if he truly loved his daughter he would resign today because it would be the correct and at least decent thing to do. But let's not get it twisted. Just because Jamie was denied a $2 million payout doesn't mean that he's going to be giving up control. Judge Penny has rejected any attempt to legally remove him from the conservatorship, and while Jamie is still in control of his daughter's financial and career decisions, Jodie Montgomery remains in charge of her personal and medical affairs. So all that talk about him stepping down was simply lip service to the Free Britney crowd online, hoping that this would calm them down, but we all see right through what's happening here and it's not okay. In recent weeks, Rosengart suggested that forensic CPA Jason Rubin replace Jamie in the conservatorship, but that still means that all these people believe Britney needs to be controlled by someone. It's fine for her to have an accountant or someone to manage her career, but under the guise of a conservatorship, these people have far too much control over her life and her decisions. So far, Jamie Spears' lawyers have yet to respond to their payout being declined, but if they do, we'll be sure to let you know.
There's been a heck of a lot of drama going on in the Spears family. Britney Spears' conservatorship has really torn the family apart and has revealed a lot of secrets within the family. The one person that the public seems to hate the most is Britney's father Jamie, and as people do, they've gone searching for secrets to expose them, and boy are there some good ones. Let me tell you about some of those juicy details today as we count down the top 10 secrets Jamie Spears does not want you to know. At number 10, Britney's kids. Britney Spears has gone through so much, being a famous pop star, enduring scrutiny from the media, and going through a messy custody battle for her kids. Out of all the hard things that Britney has endured, the hardest thing has been fighting for her kids, and it turns out that her father Jamie has been one of the reasons that fight has been so hard. Jamie Spears is the reason why Britney can't see her kids as often as she should, and that's a secret that her father has been trying to keep. Britney used to have a 50-50 custody of her son with Kevin Federline, that is until Jamie Spears got into an alleged altercation with Britney's eldest son. Sources said that this altercation happened after Jamie's eldest grandson Preston got into an argument with him and he locked himself in a room. Jamie then allegedly broke into the room and shook Preston. No charges were filed, but this incident did cause Kevin to seek out a restraining order against Jamie. The day following the incident, Kevin proceeded to create a new custody agreement so that Britney would only have 30% custody instead of the 50% that she was used to having. This was a major blow, and Britney resented her father for causing this, causing yet another tear in their relationship. At number 9, in it for the money. Money brings out the worst in people, which is probably why people hate Jamie Spears so much, because after getting exposed, the public found out how money hungry he really is, and it honestly kind of makes a lot of sense. After Britney got famous and started touring, Britney's mom and a family friend took turns traveling with the pop star, and during this time, Britney's manager recalled rarely ever seeing the singer's father. In a testimony given in the Framing Britney Spears documentary, Britney's agent spoke out about Jamie Spears' place in Britney's life at the beginning of her career, where they said, quote, "Her mother would do whatever it took personally and for the family's sake for Britney to be a star. I never talked to her father. The only thing Jamie ever said to me was my daughter is going to be so rich, she's going to buy me a boat." End quote. He seemed to see the dollar signs before seeing his daughter, which really isn't right. At number 8, alcoholism. People often talk about Britney and her substance use back in the day, but it turns out that she's not the only one in the family to have a problem with substances and going to rehab. What some people might not know is Jamie is actually an alcoholic and has been to rehab in the past. In his ex-wife Lynn's book, she wrote about how her former husband started drinking heavily in 1977, just after their son Brian was born. Speaking on the topic, Lynn said, quote, "With every alcohol-soaked episode, our perfect little life began to unstitch, and the knot we had tied with our vows and our love started to work loose, thread by painful thread." End quote. Jamie eventually ended up getting the help he needed after Britney convinced her father to seek help and go to rehab in 2004. At number 7, restaurant incident. Back in 2020, a restaurant owner came forward to speak about a horrible encounter with Jamie Spears, and not enough people know about it. Celebrity restaurateur Bobby Oakes broke his silence on his encounter with Britney's father, describing his unruly and erratic behavior. When speaking out about the encounter that they had just before they were set to open their business, Bobby said, quote, "He didn't have any say in the business, but a few days prior to the grand opening, out of the blue, he came storming into my office at 9 a.m. with an unknown young young man and woman. He appeared to either be hungover or high because he was literally bouncing off the walls. In front of my managers and chefs, he announced that the young man and woman he was with would be hired as managers for Britney's restaurant. He was so out of it and screaming, "Nobody is going to ruin my little girl's place," end quote. Bobby said that in this moment he called Britney's mom to tell her what was going on, saying, quote, "Jamie had to be kept in check and tolerated," end quote. Jamie's behavior in this moment makes the conservatorship drama make more sense. At number 6, family drama. In Lynn Spears' book, she wrote about how her ex-husband Jamie used to treat her, and after comparing what she wrote about to what Britney claimed in her testimony about her father, things sounded eerily similar and painted an ugly picture of Jamie. In her book, Lynn spoke about the verbal mistreatment that she endured from Jamie after she went back to college to finish her degree. Lynn recalled how Jamie told her, quote, "You're too stupid to graduate. How come they don't know that down at the school?" end quote. Lynn also said in her book that her kids, quote, "saw far too many knockdown, drag-out fights between their mama and daddy," end quote. The family drama has been going on this whole time, it's just that no one knew for years. At number 5, too much control. Having too much control over someone's life can just be a little much. Yes, I understand if you're a parent and you're controlling your kid's life to protect them from the world, but there comes a point where that control becomes excessive, and that's what we've seen with Jamie and Britney Spears. Jamie has not only been controlling his daughter's finances and career, but also what she can and cannot do with her body, who she can and cannot interact with, and even the colors of the cabinets in her house. He's truly had control over every aspect of Britney's life, and he's been controlling the people who work for him and his daughter as well, since everyone has been on his payroll, so really whatever he says goes. It's also been said that Jamie would give Britney a $2,000 weekly allowance, but even that was monitored by him, so she really didn't have any escape from her father's helicopter parent energy until now. At number 4, RV home. Here's something that a lot of people find a little strange about Jamie Spears that you might not have known about. It turns out that Jamie allegedly sold their family home amidst the conservatorship battle and has been living in an RV. Even though we know how much money this man has been making off his daughter and how much his net worth is, he's still currently living off the grid. Reports have said that Jamie Spears has been living in an RV in a storage facility parking lot. One source detailed his living situation, saying, quote, "He's been staying down a winding country road on the outskirts of town in an RV parked at a warehouse that has stored the boxed up relics of his daughter's megawatt career," end quote. This confused a lot of people because we already know that he has more than enough money to buy himself a pretty good living situation, however he's choosing to live more simply. There are some on the internet who have speculated that Jamie was only doing this to make people believe that he's not just in it for the money, but as I covered earlier, we know that's not exactly true. At number 3, Britney's medication. Because Jamie has had so much control over Britney, he's had final say about everything about her, including what substances she puts in her body, more specifically medication. A source who used to work for Britney as her bodyguard spoke about the crazy medication Britney was forced to take. When speaking out about it, the source said that someone would come to the house every week to bring Britney her medication. Her bodyguard would explain to the singer what everything was, and she would take what was prescribed to her, this being 3 antipsychotic medications and birth control. The bodyguard then went on to say that these medications affected the singer greatly, adding that, quote, "She'd go from sane to talking about parallel universes," end quote. She also alleged that Britney was prescribed lithium as punishment for speaking out about her desire to cancel her Las Vegas residency in 2019. The bodyguard said that taking this medication too much could really affect your mind severely, and so she expressed her concern for the singer. At number 2, how much he's made. One of the most shocking bits of information that's come out about Jamie's behind the scenes shenanigans is how much he's made off his daughter since becoming her conservator. Forbes broke down how much Jamie has made over the last 12 years, and it's honestly pretty shocking. Since 2008, Jamie Spears has paid himself $16,000 a month, totaling up to about $2.4 million. Now, you have to remember how he got all this money in the first place. Britney never really stopped working during the time that her father has been her conservator, since she's done music tours and has had her Las Vegas residency, so he's been getting a payout from each gig. Mind you, Britney has also voiced how she didn't want to work that much at the time, and she's commented on how brutal this work really was for her. So not only did Jamie make so much money from his daughter and all of her hard work, but he did all of that while Britney was suffering, not wanting to work in the first place. And finally, at number 1, mistreating Britney. I'm sure we all know by now that Jamie Spears treated his daughter very poorly, but when you take a moment to really reflect on the things that he's said and done, you realize just how messed up the situation is and realize why Jamie wanted to keep all of this pretty quiet. Jamie had control over every aspect of Britney's life, but the torment started immediately after he became her conservator. Other than the control over her life, Jamie also treated his daughter poorly and subjected her to some very harsh comments. It's been said that in the days and weeks following Jamie's appointment to conservator, he told his daughter that she was a terrible mother, a quote-unquote W word, if you understand, and made comments about her weight as well. At one point, when he was trying to push Britney back into the spotlight, he told her, quote, "You're fat, daddy's gonna get you on a diet and a trainer, and you're gonna get back in shape," end quote. That is certainly something you wouldn't want to say to your child, especially after having such a hard time in their life.
Jamie Spears has finally agreed to step down and relinquish the control that he had over his daughter for the last 13 years. This is a major milestone for the Free Britney movement. TMZ has just reported that Jamie's lawyer has filed legal documents in which he says, "There are in fact no actual grounds for suspending or removing Mr. Spears as the conservator of the estate, and it is highly debatable whether a change in conservator at this time would be in Ms. Spears' best interests." However, he then changes his tone and even points blame at the Free Britney campaign by saying, "Nevertheless, even as Mr. Spears is the unremitting target of unjustified attacks, he does not believe that a public battle with his daughter over his continuing service as her conservator would be in her best interests. So, even though he must contest this unjustified petition for his removal, Mr. Spears intends to work with the court and his daughter's new attorney to prepare for an orderly transition to a new conservator." And the document continues by saying that regardless of his former title, Jamie will always be her father and will always love her unconditionally and will always look out for her best interests. He then, however, decides to take a moment to attack Lynn Spears as well. You know, the mother of this daughter that he loves so very much. He said her credibility is undermined because Britney had refused to see Lynn when she was at the mental health facility in 2019. He did, however, confirm that Lynn has had little involvement in the conservatorship, but then, he also tacked on little involvement in Britney's life for the last 13 years as well. He's weirdly acting like some sort of savior too for Britney even as he departs this conservatorship. He says again in these documents that he saved Britney when she was in crisis, desperately in need of help 13 years ago, adding not only was she suffering mentally and emotionally, she was also being manipulated by predators and in financial distress. Mr. Spears came to his daughter's rescue to protect her. And Britney's lawyer Matthew Rosengard did respond to the news as well and said that they are pleased but not really surprised by it, also adding that they were disappointed in the ongoing shameful and reprehensible attacks on Ms. Spears and others. He goes on to say, "We look forward to continuing our vigorous investigation into the conduct of Mr. Spears and others over the past 13 years while he reaped millions of dollars from his daughter's estate, and I look forward to taking Mr. Spears' sworn deposition in the near future. In the interim, rather than making false accusations and taking cheap shots at his own daughter, Mr. Spears should step aside immediately." Jamie Spears has reportedly just filed a petition to end Britney's conservatorship, but while her lawyer is calling it a legal victory, he is still concerned that Jamie is trying to avoid any accountability. Previously, Britney wanted Jamie charged for what he did to her throughout this conservatorship, so while we talk about the good news, let's take it all with a grain of salt. After weeks upon weeks of refusing the multiple requests to immediately resign from his role as co-conservator, Jamie Spears is finally filing a petition to end the conservatorship. Britney's lawyer Matthew Rosengard said in a statement to Variety correspondent Elizabeth Wagmeister, "This filing represents another legal victory for Britney Spears, a massive one, as well as vindication for Ms. Spears." He continues by saying, "It appears that Mr. Spears believes he can try to avoid accountability and justice, including sitting for a sworn deposition and answering other discovery under oath. But as we assess his filing, which was inappropriately sent to the media before it was served on counsel, we will also continue to explore all options." Not only was it inappropriately sent to the media, but Rosengard also believes that this is Jamie's way of avoiding any accountability for his actions. If you recall back in July during the hearing where the judge allowed for Britney to select her own lawyer, she reiterated that she believes her father should be charged in this case. As soon as Rosengard was selected by Ms. Spears, he immediately started to make formal requests for Jamie's immediate removal. However, in addition to that, we still had Jody Montgomery remaining in place as co-conservator. Previously, when announcing that he would be stepping down, Jamie's lawyer said, "Mr. Spears continues to serve dutifully and he should not be suspended or removed, and certainly not based on false allegations. Mr. Spears is willing to step down when the time is right, but the transition needs to be orderly and include a resolution of matters pending before the court. Judge Brenda Penny, who has been overseeing this case, will still need to approve the move, but it certainly seems like the grounds for a conservatorship may no longer exist if Jamie himself is filing to end it." This did not come without a fight though. As you know, if you've been following this case with us, Jamie not only asked for $2 million in payouts towards the end of it, but he has also been receiving $16,000 a month just to manage his daughter's affairs while she was touring. According to NBC, the filing by Jamie also defended his work as Britney's conservator and said, "The conservatorship has helped Ms. Spears get through a major life crisis, rehabilitate and advance her career, and put her finances and her affairs in order, but recently things have changed. He also stated that his legal team do not believe Brittney will require any further psychological assessment, which will be a huge relief to her after she publicly objected to another evaluation in that first testimony. Jamie also acknowledged that because Brittney was granted by the court to choose her own lawyer, this should mean that she has the capacity to handle her own life. Jamie also addressed her complaints of having every aspect of her life dictated to her and said she wants to control the money she has made from her career and spend it without supervision or oversight. She wants to be able to get married and have a baby if she so chooses. In short, she wants to live her life as she chooses without the constraints of a conservator or court proceeding. Jamie also noted in the filing that his daughter is driving again and wanted more control over her therapist sessions. Now, what also blew me away a bit here was that he called on Jody Montgomery to step down as well. As I mentioned earlier, Jody currently serves as Brittney's personal conservator while he managed her finances. However, Rosengard is not going to let him slip by that easily. In his filings last week, Rosengard stated, "Mr. Spears has no right to condition his departure on improper and extortionate demands for payment or blanket immunity. Instead, the only honorable, decent, and humane course of action is for Mr. Spears to resign now, provide all necessary information to evaluate his accounting, and if matters cannot be resolved consensually, to try to defend his accounting." That term blanket immunity is really going to be the next point of contention for this case, and it echoes Rosengard's newest assertions that Jamie is trying to end this thing quickly so that he can avoid any charges. The next hearing for this case is currently scheduled for September 29th, and at this hearing the judge will be expected to make a ruling on Jamie's removal, but it is still unclear if this new petition to end the conservatorship will be discussed at that time.
People would make fun of me or laugh at me and say, "She's lying, she's got everything, she's Britney Spears." I'm not lying. I just want my life back, and it's been 13 years and it's enough.
Britney Spears recently delivered an explosive testimony at her conservatorship hearing where she put her family on blast for what they did to her over the course of this 13-year-long conservatorship. Now, both of the pop star's parents are responding to these very serious claims, and we've got everything you need to know. But first, if you could do us a big favor and please tap that like button, we'd really appreciate it. And with that out of the way, let's begin. Okay, so first I just have to get this off my chest right away because I saw a lot of comments talking about how narcissistic this family is, and you are so right. Britney's parents are named Jamie and Lynn, and they somehow named their own daughter Jamie Lynn. Like, what? Was that so you didn't forget? Anyways, now that I got that out of the way though, let's get right into the responses, shall we? Lynn Spears' lawyer Gladstone Jones said in court on Wednesday that Lynn was a very concerned mother after hearing her daughter's passionate remarks asking to end her conservatorship. Brittney told the court that the relationship with her father was all about control, which meant she had very little freedom in her own personal life. For those of you who don't know, a conservatorship is this complex legal arrangement that appoints a legal guardian for a person who they deem is unable to make their own decisions. After Spears had experienced a series of public mental health breakdowns that ended up turning into high-profile run-ins with the paparazzi, she was placed into a conservatorship in 2008. Lynn's lawyer also wanted to make it clear that she seconds her daughter's wishes and that he wanted to make sure the court took Britney's concerns seriously. He goes on to say, "I first want to say that was very courageous of Miss Spears. One thing I want to raise with the court is when she was there in May of 2019 that she didn't feel like she was heard. I feel we need to make sure today that she was heard." He then added that there needs to be a health plan put into effect before they leave the court, saying, "Today is the day while the world watches while we listen to Miss Spears that we put in place a plan. That is her mother's request, that we not leave the court without having a plan." In addition to that, her father Jamie Spears, who is divorced from Lynn, also spoke through his lawyer Vivian Lee Thureen. After Britney's testimony, Thureen read out a statement from Jamie that said, "He is sorry to see his daughter in so much pain. Mr. Spears loves his daughter and misses her very much. That being said, Jamie has been in control of his daughter's estate, business decisions, and life since 2008 after her conservatorship was approved in Los Angeles. Over the past decade though, there have been a number of changes to his control, namely when he became a co-conservator alongside a third-party financial company called Bessemer Trust. This company was said to be selected by Brittney herself and her legal team, although you could hear in her testimony that her own management was also pushing her to do things that she didn't want to do. In addition to that, in 2018, her younger sister Jamie Lynn Spears was also named as a trustee to Britney's estate. It's absolutely baffling though that her father is trying to act like he had nothing to do with this by simply saying that he is sorry to see his daughter in pain. According to a New York Times report from 2014, Brittney had expressed issues that she had with her father being her conservator. Then in 2016, another New York Times report, which actually cited records that they had obtained, Brittney said that she felt the conservatorship became an oppressive and controlling tool that was being used against her. You know, instead of for her benefit, which was the original intention. On top of that, she said 3 years later that she was afraid of her father, and at her last hearing in May of 2019, she asked the court to end her conservatorship conservatorship. However, as we all know, her request was denied and thus she was locked into another 2 more years of this until she was allowed to speak again. She even likened her treatment to sex work, saying, "I work 7 days a week, no days off," which in California, the only similar thing to this is called sex trafficking, making anyone work against their will, taking all their possessions away, credit card, cash, phone, passport, and placing them in a home where they work with the people who live with them. Although the most shocking revelation from this testimony was that her conservatorship would not allow her to remove her IUD, even though she had expressed multiple times that she wanted to have more children. Brittney did still manage to have a very successful career during this stressful time. She released albums, had a Las Vegas residency, and she had multiple perfume lines. But in 2019, she announced that she was taking a break from performing to focus on her mental health. That being said, I believe that she was also doing this to slowly starve her parents out. If you think about it, if Brittney stops performing and refuses to do anything that would make her money, what's left for them to steal? It's sad, but I could understand how this thought would cross her mind. I don't know about you, but these responses from her parents' lawyers seem pretty weak, and they would have been better off maybe just saying nothing. It's really just lip service for the public so that they don't get a milkshake thrown at them as they're trying to go to the grocery store. If they cared about their daughter, they would have ended this conservatorship a very long time ago. Instead, they manipulated their daughter and the public for years to continue living this lavish lifestyle paid for by their daughter's hard work and dedication to her craft. Yes, it is definitely a time of celebration knowing that Jamie Spears will be stepping down as Brittney's conservator, but there is still a long road ahead before she's actually free. Just because he's stepping down doesn't mean it's happening right away, and it doesn't mean that Brittney is no longer in a conservatorship. In a wild turn of events late last night, Jamie Spears filed legal papers that appear to be complying with the demands that Brittney had set during her last court hearing. In the filing, he said, "There are in fact no actual grounds for suspending or removing Mr. Spears as the conservator of the estate under probate code section 2650, and it is highly debatable whether a change in conservator at this time would be in Ms. Spears' best interest." The documents also cited that due to the highly publicized nature of this court battle, this is cause for him to step down. So in reality, he is just paying lip service to the Free Brittney movement so that they leave him alone. As I said, this is a good step, but it's certainly not the end. The document goes on to say, "Nevertheless, even as Mr. Spears is the unremitting target of unjustified attacks, he does not believe that a public battle with his daughter over his continuing service as her conservator would be in her best interest. So even though he must contest this unjustified petition for his removal, Mr. Spears intends to work with the court and his daughter's new attorney to prepare for an orderly transition to a new conservator." Keyword, new conservator. No. We want no conservator. Brittney had claimed that this entire conservatorship arrangement had been terrible for her, and even went as far as saying that her own father should be in jail. So you tell me why a conservator is still required for a woman that is happy and healthy all on her own. This would never happen to a male celebrity. Charlie Sheen was literally on national television saying that he had tiger blood, and he was going on like fueled rants, but we didn't see Martin Sheen coming in saying, "Oh, we gotta lock my son up for his mental health." No, because in a free society, you were allowed to make your own mistakes and learn from those mistakes. Brittney had no choice but to give up her individuality because what? She was going through a hard time in her life 13 years ago? The logic for keeping this going for so long is absolutely baffling. There is a reason why they tried to keep this a secret for so long, because look what happens when the conservatee is allowed to speak up. The house of cards just comes crashing down. Brittney's lawyer seems happy with the progress, but thankfully he is not letting up on Jamie. Just because he's stepped down, it doesn't mean that he can be absolved from what he's done. Matthew Rosengart goes on to say, "We are pleased that Mr. Spears and his lawyer have today conceded in a filing that he must be removed. It is vindication for Brittney. We are disappointed, however, by their ongoing shameful and reprehensible attacks on Ms. Spears and others. We look forward to continuing our vigorous investigation into the conduct of Mr. Spears and others over the past 13 years while he reaped millions of dollars from his daughter's estate, and I look forward to taking Mr. Spears' sworn deposition in the near future." Adding, "In the interim, rather than making false accusations and taking cheap shots at his own daughter, Mr. Spears should remain silent and step aside immediately." Now, to make things even more confusing, there are a number of reports that are also questioning the validity of Jamie Spears stepping down. People magazine reported that Jamie had not given up control over Brittney's $60 million estate. Plus, his lawyer slammed Jamie's ex-wife Lynn, who had previously filed a petition urging the court to allow her daughter to hire her own lawyer, and claimed that Brittney has a fear and hatred of Jamie. In response, Jamie's lawyer said, "Instead of criticizing Mr. Spears, Lynn should be thanking him for ensuring Miss Spears' well-being and for persevering through the years-long tenure requiring his 365 24/7 attention, long days and sometimes late nights to deal with the day-to-day and emergency issues, all to protect Miss Spears and those around her charged with protecting his daughter. Lynn has had only limited involvement in Miss Spears' life these last 13 years. She has not had a parental role in her life for decades. A lawyer for Lynn Spears also responded for comment and said, "Lynn Spears is pleased Jamie has agreed to step down. Lynn entered into this conservatorship to protect her daughter almost 3 years ago. She has accomplished what she has set out to do. She will have no further comment." Now all of this does mean that Brittney's voice is finally being heard, and I genuinely believe that there are people who are looking out for her best interest now, but just a day before the request for removal was filed, Jamie Spears claimed that Brittney's personal conservator, Jody Montgomery, had expressed concern on a July phone call about Brittney's mental health. The court documents state, "During our call, Miss Montgomery sounded very distraught and expressed how concerned she was about my daughter's recent behavior and overall mental health. Miss Montgomery explained that my daughter was not timely or properly taking her medications, was not listening to the recommendations of her medical team, and refused to even see some of her doctors." Oh, you mean she's acting like a free human being? You'd think that the people who are all about, national pride in America would be using Brittney as a big example of what censorship and free speech stifling looks like. All of these people are talking on her behalf and claiming that they know what's best for her, but are they ever gonna just trust Brittney like maybe she knows what's best for herself? Crazy thought, I know. What's absolutely twisted as well though is he actually said that he and Montgomery agreed that many of his daughter's statements during the last meetings were not true and attributed her statements to the fact that she is mentally sick. Jamie Spears added to the filing, speaking about Montgomery here, she raised potential options including a 5150 psychiatric hold. However, in response to that, Montgomery's attorney issued a statement countering this claim. Lorianne Wright said that Montgomery denied Mr. Spears' assertion and at no time did she express to Mr. Spears that Brittney would qualify for such a hold. This claim by Jamie is just a last-ditch effort to keep some of his control. If Brittney has the presence of mind to perform at a Las Vegas residency and do all of the work necessary for that, plus continue to earn her own money steadily, for which millions of that money went into Jamie's pocket, then his argument is absolutely not valid.